Thank you for coming on.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can we start by you telling us about your family? Like, what's your setup and how old are your children?
Set up meaning okay, so that I could go either direction, like split in the road. Um, I'll stay on my children's side. I am a father of two kids. I have a son, Carter, who is 27. So it gets to the point too where I start going 27, 28, and I have to do the math. But 28. And my daughter, Bailey, who is 17. So yeah, a boy and a girl, and both one technically adult, both very adult, and one almost legally an adult. And yeah, so that's a trip. And my son lives just outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and my daughter lives about an hour outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia. And I'm for those I live in Canada. I live just outside of Vancouver. I'm half Canadian and but was born in the United States and lived there full time until 6 years ago when I moved to a little place outside of Vancouver called Salt Spring Island.
Can you take us back to when you found out you were about to become a dad?
When I found out I was going to be a dad with my son, and these are with two different. I have two different moms. Those are so, and I speak openly about it. And the two up until close to now, the two longest uh, term relationships I've had are where my two children are from. And so, yeah, I remember I was already in a mode once I knew that we were expecting, and we found that out. We had gotten pregnant on our honeymoon, um, and I was 27. So I look at now going, I was my son's age when I found out I was going to be a dad. I go, wow, that blows my mind completely. And he and I talk about that like now, right? So it's just strange. But yeah, I remember being incredibly uh, excited and then going into what I think would be considered the male version of like the nesting mode, but it was all about like securing my immediate financial stability to have things like own a house or blah 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 at 27. Which again, some people go, I do it at 22. What are you, 27? You're a late bloomer. I'm like, I was still like, I want to be drummer, whatever. I had no idea. So yeah, I was super excited, and I remember like stuff like preparing the nursery and picking out wallpapers and doing all that kind of stuff. And then like the first, I mean, I don't care how much time you have and how deep you want to go, but like, yeah, it was mind blowing being introduced to being a parent, from birth and everything that followed there. But yeah, and then with my daughter, definitely too ecstatic. I was older. I was almost 10 years older. And so my son was then, I had already been a parent too, but through a separation and a divorce and stuff. And so that was all unique balances that, yeah, a lot of that stuff I start realizing now. That's about the point I feel like, wait, why did it start becoming harder or more difficult with, blended families and another child here and like all that stuff. But still absolutely nothing but excitement and anticipation. And that was, with my daughter's mom. And yeah, and they're two of the greatest. It's amazing how at my age now, and I'll be 55 this year, like I realize how much your perspective about what you consider, you were like, oh, I've always thought about my kids or made decisions for my kids, and how different it actually is now, the decisions I make thinking about my kids versus when I actually kind of, well, I guess I am by propelling me through my career. And if I can provide a great opportunity and they see me being an artist and whatever, and that's all still quite self motivated, where now I'm like, yeah, I could certainly try and figure out how to sell that snare drum if that would allow, someone like me to help buy a nicer prom dress or something. I'm like, yeah, no question.
Did you have any preconceived ideas about what becoming a dad would be like and how that would fit with your career?
It's an excellent question. And I think I did. And yet I don't want to rat anybody out or sound like I'm blaming it on something in the past. But I'll tell you exactly what I started to think was the way that it somehow went. Now I'm really going to take you back, or you're going to go, this guy's, yeah, I don't know. I can't relate. I was growing up and as a young drummer, incredibly into Steve Smith, and still am. I think he's one of the best in the world. but really his time with Journey, and I studied that stuff a lot, and because he was a rock drummer, but in a pop band and whatever. And I remember seeing one of the Journey videos, like some ballad, Faithfully, or one of those ones where it was all like seemed like home video footage from being on the road, and they're carrying their babies and they're getting on jets and whatever. And I was like, yeah, man, that's not it. Well, when you get to it, you can make that all work, and you've got assistants. And look at how do Motley Crue have kids? They got all have kids, and they do it rock and roll or something. And yet, it never really was too. It's been a lot of that. My kids have also. That's the other funny part. Like sometimes I go, I wish I could have done some things different, but they've also gotten to experience some pretty cool stuff throughout that too. That I sometimes go, I don't know, man. Would you trade it in? And now that they're getting older, like no it's awesome. Like so I don't know. I think I had the expectation that it would be somehow a lot easier. And I will relate to one other thing that did help me keep a lot of balance and still does, based on the fact that I don't live close by, and there's lots involved to now connect. Thank God for this kind of mediums and things like that. But I did a bit of touring years ago with Jackson Brown, and I ended up, and I've not really told this story in any way publicly, but there's no reason why it couldn't be told. But I remember it vividly, and it was a private charter, and I ended up sitting next to him, which I already thought that was unique enough, but I was cool with it, but didn't only like speak when spoken to, and kind of whatever. And we ended up in a conversation, and part of that conversation, I knew that he had been a father pretty young and has a son. I can't recall his name at this very moment, and I had my son at the time, and yet I was on a stint where I hadn't seen him in at that point close to 2 months, and was on the road, and he just painted it to me like this. If you remember this, I just said, does that ever get to you? How do you navigate that? Whatever. I struggle. I have no idea. I feel like a bad father because I'm gone, and it's hard on his mom and blah blah blah. And he said, well, if you look at it, you deal with concentrated time, if that makes sense. So if you take that concentration and spread it out over a period of a year, you actually, and we're working what was a 9 to 5 with the things that you may have to do to keep that rat rate and whatever, your time when you're not allows you to be from morning when you can pack their lunch to their play in the afternoon to the evening, to these stretches of time that you do get to be home and get to be there for a lot more than the ordinary parent could, if even when they're on a quote much more normal schedule. And at the time that did make sense, and it still rings true. I still think it's but yeah, I think it just became hard. The road was hard. And then again, when it starts becoming a situation where you're then co-parenting and you're not together, and you're trying, because you have to be, can you take a tour for 2 months and then you're gone from your time that it's your co-parenting time to give your former spouse a space to have a life and do things too. And that's an honest to God, like, that was in a lot of times when I was younger, it was like, well, what do you want? This is why you knew what you're getting into, and stuff like that. And that became, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I think now too, I just go, I can't say I would ever take it back, because then I wouldn't have arrived at the place to see it and feel it like I do now and appreciate it. But yeah, it definitely isn't easy, that's for sure. But then again, parenting period, I don't know. I talk to all kinds of friends in all kinds of walks of life, and I'm certainly not, this isn't like they're going, oh, wait, really, buddy? Yeah, ours is great. We seem to be doing fine outside of whatever you do in your life, being that drum guy or whatever.
The reason we're doing this podcast is to have more conversations about, parenting and drumming and all of it, because for me and Jem, we didn't really hear any of these chats. And so do you think touring and having kids, does it mix? And what insights do you have to, maybe there's someone listening who's about to become a dad and he's about to go on tour? Any words or pearls of wisdom that you can offer?
See, yes, I would say my answer to that is yes. Then I guess I just did. I invoke this little pause, right? Invoke this slight pause and then go like, okay, so what size pearl, what color, how deep do I go into the box to find the rarer ones or the more significant ones? That's a huge question that I think like you can choose everything from where are you at in your business relationship with whatever you're doing to go out on tour, which means are you even aware of like, do you have anything in writing? Is this all like your butt, you spit in a handshake, you guys are indie band friend, you guys met and you met your wife she was selling merch and while you guys are hot in Philadelphia and it's like and now you're opening up for no offense 311 on the Warp Tour and so you quit your job at the hardware store or the whatever, right, where at least you knew you were making 700 a week to only take 400 a week to go on tour with this stuff and you don't even have that guaranteed. Oof, like I have no idea what you could be talking about or what that's like, but I've been there. I'm all right. So, two, I think maintaining contact. And if, again, we're talking about, this is no, in my opinion, I mean, I only relate to the fact that in my relationship, I've been the father and generally, but this is for parents of both genders leaving to do work, where you're going to be away from, or during a pregnancy or post, or early, a lot of that stuff. Communication is essential. I mean, I look back and I go, there were times early on, because again, my son is 28. So we didn't have, like, I couldn't just do this where we sent a link on a thing and we zoomed out and whatever. I don't even remember. I had a cell phone and a pager, I think. I remember having a pager for my job when he was born. So there certainly wasn't like this kind of thing. But now I look at it and I go, holy cow, pick your channel on how you want to have as much communication as at least you can. What a blessing. I hope, in the long run, that's still what we hope it was created for. But communication, dare I say, and again, I choose that has adult, or at least themes to it. It's like, keep your head on straight. I would say that, it's important. I think anytime away. And again, if I'm not straying from the question, are we also talking about the fact that this is involving where the working drummer would be, or would you be leaving home to go on a road tour, right? So also as a human being, I think that's when you get into stuff where you start to realize, and it doesn't matter whether you're a musician or but when you travel and you're gone for periods of time, there's a lot. I've just experienced it being a musician. There's a lot that's enticing and strangely unique. And when you start getting separation and, they say absence makes the heart grow fonder, or out of sight, out of mind. And so keeping healthy communication with your partner and the co-parent, and balancing out the fact that you feel like you're guilty when, they're changing diapers and going through a lot and you're sending them pictures of what it looks like from the stage right before you got to go to the Great Wall of China the next day or some crazy stuff. And they're going, I hate you. But the money will land in 2 weeks. I don't know. I know nothing about it. I keep coming back to that. I don't know. Did any of that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so what did that ultimately say? Really, and be smart. Just be smart. Maintain good communication as best you possibly can. Be honest, and and then hold your mud, because you're out there to do a job. I mean, that's the other thing. It's a blessing. If you're out there working and the other party seems to be lining up, then it should be hopefully a good blessing, and you start to get into some of the benefits of why you're doing it in the first place, because then you really would love to eventually convey to your children your passion for what you did, which then they see that in ways that allows them to have clarity on their own passions, no matter if it was the same thing or something different. That's a fine line. Whole nother show.
Did you ever have any pushback from your children for being away a lot with touring?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I do speak openly about it, and I have no problem, because it just is such a huge part of my story. But like, my relationship with my kids is not anything near standard. I mean, again, when I catch myself when I say that, and I go, I do believe that is even starting to separate some. And when bottom line is, for me, it felt and has felt and has always been and will always have a little bit of a tenderness to it. some scar tissue that I don't think will ever heal, because otherwise you'd have to reprogram your memory in your brain, which doesn't happen. It's how you handle when those times happen. And a huge chunk of that is knowing where it's at now. And so because of a few things, but because of, I don't drink. That was a huge part. I'm an alcoholic in recovery, and a huge part of, so I had a lot of separation from my children, for reasons that were other than touring, but that had a lot to do with it. And then my behaviors otherwise just caused so much damage, and damage that at the time you don't realize you're doing that kind of damage because you're stuck in your own, I'm doing whatever. And that's the turnabout that you start to see post a lot of that kind of stuff, is your part in creating such a calamity, and the selfishness that at the time you don't see as selfishness because you're neck deep in your own, but I can't, I'm this, I can't, that was, whatever. So in reconnecting and in reestablishing relationships with them that I have now, I try my best. What I should say is I have almost encouraged and still look for moments when I might be able to open an opportunity or make sure my kids both know there's an opportunity to vent some shit at me if they need to, because yeah, I get it. And I don't go like, okay, here, turn around and look at just give me another, not like that. Like, how you doing? You need to get like, how's this feeling? Is this something like, cause I'm here to talk about it. If you want to just let me know what's up, because I need to be able to navigate that with you now, and yet not be your buddy pal, still be your parent, but like still in a recovery from periods of time that there was not even communication. So yeah, so in that regard, mine being kind of extreme, there have been moments where they have both definitely expressed to me how hard that was, and how they wish they had much more of a normal situation, like the father and the mother that was there all the time at the Halloween parade when they're in third grade and stuff like that, for sure. Yeah. And that is a huge cost to be considered prior to, and where you find that balance. And I'm certainly no one to say it needs to be X, Y, or Z. That's the journey of navigating it. But I would say post a lot of it now at this age through it, which I guess is why I'm now speaking about it or giving my experiences. I would pay a lot more attention and make sure that I was navigating it, trying to understand what it truly meant to put my kids first or put my career first. And if I decided which one I decided, to truly be confident with that decision and continue in it. And because you kind of have to, as long as you're open to know that that's the decision you made, and stick by it. And I think your heart will tell you, and I don't know if that makes sense, but I wish I could have done some things differently, but I'm still really grateful that I did throughout, because I ultimately think they are both benefiting from the experiences that we've all had, because now it's pretty like it's a beautiful, it's a better relationship than I could have imagined it before when I was bobbling it.
That's really lovely. It just sounds like you're at a place where you've made some amends, or you're totally open to that communication that you were talking about earlier. And that, I think that's really special, when a parent can do that and like own the things that have maybe gone wrong. Because I know for some generations that's not a thing. So the fact that you're able to be open and have that open communication.
I can only nod my head or say anything back if I took a moment to think about if either of my parents would be watching this. Again, man, this is like age-old stuff that you hear about, like, oh, I'll never be my parents. I'm never going to be like my parents, never going to be like them. And then at some point you're going, I'm just like my parents. Or then, and then like, oh, but I still feel like, no, I'm still that guy. But no, I'm just like my parents. Doesn't matter and so that is the thing, right? I don't know, but I do think, yeah, and you know what? It's okay if my dad, if I tell the story, I'll say this, like, this is a pure example of that. And I care and love for my dad deeply. I remember at a point in time when my daughter was very young, which meant that my son was, 7 or 8, 10. And he was running around. We had family over because my daughter was a newborn, and blah, blah, blah. And he came up to me and asked me, could they do something? Could they do something? And I said, no, you can't do it right now. Yeah, but I really wanted listen, I can't do it. Yeah, but I really, okay, listen, sit down for a minute. We're going to, blah, blah, blah. And I took maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and I explained the scene why we're going to, okay, so then after dinner, you and Jake can go on. And I turned around and my dad, I think, I exaggerate it now for the point, and this is where it gets touchy, but it was something to the extent of like, wow, what a generation, or something to the extent of like, well, what do you mean? It's like, I mean, no should have just been no. You can't do that. But like, you take this time to do, and that I realized too was, and it wasn't judgment, but it was just a difference in how I was raised too. If like, because if you go, no, you shouldn't have to go, no, because you're about, I used to get the example too, you're about to run in the street and get hit by a car. Right? No. But so yeah, I mean, I look at it, it's a different generation, and I also have to personally try and navigate the pitfalls of thinking, and letting either guilt or trying to make up for things that I can't go back and change affect how I make proper decisions as a parent, even now. Like trying to make up for stuff that you really can't do other than really be present and helpful and fatherly and or friendly and or supportive and or no BS to a teenagers through there. I'm in with one now with my daughter. It's like, that alone is the reason why I know they created heartburn medication. I'll say that. You
That is
guys have,
hilarious.
yeah, you guys have, holy cow, she's 17. What the heck?
Just don't. Okay. I
I've become
can't.
my dad.
My 8-year-old is giving me all the sass
Oh
of
yeah,
a teen. So
it's continuing to go earlier and earlier, Yeah, that's again a whole nother show, and I won't get on. I'm trying not to get on any soapboxes whatsoever anyways.
well, you can do that here. Um, so I wanted to get your perspective on this because I think me and Jem have been asked this as women. So I wanted to pose it to you. Do you think it's possible to have it all, like a successful career and family life?
My answer to that is yes, based on how you calibrate both of those things you mentioned, which would be success, so both at business and in family life and whatever. So how do you, here we go, ethereal. No, how do you rate success? Then what makes it successful? Oh, I really, your kids seem to adore you, and your wife goes, it's okay. I love the fact that we get backstage and we get to go, and they love the life, and you're making a lot of money. And then it is the video guy carrying his baby on the jet plane and whatever. I've not lived that life fully to any extent in the job I have. Primarily, I've gotten to see some pretty amazing stuff. And so with that, I've been able to include my kids at times, or my significant other, and whatever. But at the same time, so I'm blessed for those, because I still feel like, okay, well, at least I know what that sort of understand feels like. And it would be lovely, isn't it lovely, if money makes everything easier? Like that's the sort of the mentality. But the primary things that I think would be needed to balance out what success means in both would require a really realistic view of what that means of both, because success will not for sure equate to money, nor would I think that the spouse who is the other part of your family would want you to not achieve the things you wanted to do, even if it had, I mean, dare I say, not at the expense of the family, but even if it wasn't about the monetary gain for that decision to do something that you wanted to do out of passion, desire, or to help because that's what you wanted to do. So support is incredibly important both ways. I can certainly make time instead of, you don't understand, I've just been on 3 flights and I'm 8 hours. So let me just take a nap and we'll talk about this in a couple hours. Like, you have to be able to not be that guy and connect. Does that make sense?
Like the fact that you haven't really kind of put that into words before. And that's exactly why we've wanted to speak to you, because we just feel that there definitely aren't many mums having these conversations, but especially not dads. And is that something that you have kind of experienced and noticed? That what was it like with other dads? Have any of you ever like talked about this stuff, or just? left it to one side?
Yeah. I think I would say the primary relationships that I have in my life now, or that still exist in my life now, and that I've gone through, have been, I would say, closest would be, aside from family, and like my example of whatever, my uncle as a father or something, if that makes sense, or my brother-in-law as a father to my niece and nephew. I'm talking um, examples of fathers, meaning like, I would say the guy, like my touring family or my band members are a pretty huge example of what I've seen. Yeah, primarily. I mean, if that makes sense, I've been with that band 15 years. And my son was, not a child, but point being, our kids have grown up together, and now our stories and our pictures of what they're doing in their life, even after 15 years, is significantly different. And it's mind blowing. And so some of them, I can tell you this, when I think, mine has been so full of carnage and like, oh my gosh, I really have if it could equate to reading Braille, let's say, mine was super, super, lot of words and very, very few bumps on other people's pages. But yet at the same time, I realized, no, I've seen them parent and be examples of fathers to me as musicians on the same gig I'm doing, gone the same amount at the same place for the same time with kids at home, and how they've navigated it. And I've learned a lot from that. A lot, I believe, has been positive to help me do the best I can. Most of the time that I realize, again, most of the chunks I have out of my surfboard are from my own decisions. Like if that they're repercussions of certain things. Holy cow, I'm looking at it going, 3 of the guys are still married with grown children that they had when they were young children when I joined the band 15 years ago, and they're still married. And so I'm not. That's when I always go, like, I'm somehow the spinning firecracker. So I don't know, sometimes relating it in examples, I don't know. And, I took on the role for a long time as the guy in the band. This, I'll wheel us back into drumming and crazy and the realities of my situation. But I used to somehow find it, and I used to then say it was the Keith Moon or the John Bonham in me, that I would somehow go, oh, you guys are just living vicariously through me. And when I used to like drink and these guys are married men, and I'm already like, I'm co-parenting with my ex-wife, and I'm dating this girl, and oh, this and that. And yet I was like, just doing whatever. Such a strange time, because their lives were grounded and I saw that being grounded, but we also got to experience things. And then I just would be, I tried to, I think for a long period of time, I thought there was something, whether it was glamorous or something, the example that I thought I needed to, but then I started embracing the fact that I was a bit more chaotic, and my life was like, you got to expect, like, what's the latest craziness going on in his world, or in his romantic life, or in his relationships, or how's Carter doing, when's the last time we saw it, I don't know if that makes sense too, but I did have really good examples in that regard, and all around me. I just think the thing that is unique about ultimately what this is, that I'm realizing I do have a handful of, but certainly not enough. And I don't know why. No, I take that back. I do know why it doesn't exist, but that is the way, a way for men. Here I am communicating it and talking about this stuff by being asked direct questions that I want to do my best to answer and express. And yet I haven't done, I can't think of too many times, like I said, even conversations I've had with men to this extent about my particular feeling about it. Men just, it's just, I don't know, it's still just not inherently comfortable for a lot of preconceived reasons, but I think it's incredibly healthy. So.
Why do you think that is? Like, I'm just curious. Do you think it's just like not talked about because
Yeah,
it's not
no,
rock
of
and
course.
roll, or?
Like, that's when the comedian tries to come out in me, and then I go, oh, is that comedian trying to hide some sort of really deep, but I don't think it's that deep. The reason is stereotypical, like, it's macho. I call it, the joke is, it's macho wacho, it's like, man, because I still really love baseball and could sit and really get into a Zoom meeting talking about the Dodgers right now, and go for hours talking about, and has nothing to do with how I feel about anything other than that guy's horrible. He's batting horribly. Get him out. Get the F out of there. What are we doing, bro? Whatever. It's because I can do that. But then I go like, man, how did it feel when I realized I this or that? Or how does it feel to miss a birthday? Have you ever missed I've missed a lot of stuff. How does it feel? It fucking
Oh,
sucks.
please swear.
Don't worry.
Oh
Please
God, I just realized,
swear.
but then I just realized, no, and I'm just dawning on me that I saw a post of
Me
yours and that, yeah,
swearing.
it's going to
Soz.
pick up the reputation of you being some sort of, yeah,
Potty mouth.
there it is. Okay.
You've been sober for 5 years?
Yeah. Over 5 years, September 4th September 4th is my sobriety date. Yeah.
Huge respect and congrats for that.
Thank you.
Maybe this is a really dumb question, so I'm sorry, but
There
I'm
are
just
no,
gonna ask it.
yeah, there are no dumb, only my dumb answer. No,
Um,
wait, that didn't make sense. Go ahead.
when you were drinking, do you think being on tour exacerbates that problem, or do you think it would have happened regardless? And secondly, how does it feel to be touring sober?
Um, One thing I am going to say, and this is, I still choose to have a perfectly rational conversation at another time that won't be such a huge chunk or take up a minor point of this. But I never want to be dishonest, nor do I not want to be transparent. But I do want to say this about recovery and about my journey. I'm an alcoholic, and alcohol has always been my problem. And anything else I ever did in my life that I induced, whatever, other than the handful of times, and some could even go, what do you mean handful? I don't know. I was born in 1970, and I was playing drums when I was 10, doing Iron Man with my buddies in a garage when I was 12, going, let's smoke cigarettes. And I was stealing weed from my parents. And that is the truth, and I'm not lying. So that is whatever. And they're great people, and they've had amazing lives. But that was the thing, and whatever. And so but it was always alcohol. Anything else always came secondary. Now throughout my recovery period. So all of this to say, I'm getting to a point that, I tread this lightly because I'm a huge fan of recovery, period, of anything that has become the addiction in one's life. And I don't have anything in my life right now, but I do have what I consider a very regimented use or experience with marijuana. Now, I don't do it to an extent that is considered now some people. So right off the bat, that's when I go like, oh, is that controversial? What are people gonna, I don't, the beautiful part is that's not my concern if my life is in order and I'm living in a way that I know like that's the best me. And some could say, oh no, but that's just because you're high all the time. And part of me goes like, if that's what you think, like the closest people around me who have seen me, which are my children, which is my parents, everyone the closest to me, my sister, has seen me where I had been in the depths of my alcoholic addiction, active alcohol addiction, and has seen me in my life now 5.5 years without a drop of alcohol in my system, nor any other type of substance other than Advil or headache, Tylenol on occasion, and products containing various levels of THC. And my mom even bought me a gift certificate for a dispensary where you can obtain it legally here where I live for my birthday a year and a half ago. So I don't know. I mean, I look at that and I go, those things still speak to me. And I run a very clear program on what it is to have something become an uncontrolled thing in your life, if that makes sense. So I wanted to speak on that about, rather than if I sit here and I'm like, oh, well, what is it like? Because then I go into, I can speak to the difference of what it's like to be sober completely from alcohol. I can speak to the difference of what it's like to be sober from alcohol. But where I say that I would use the equivalent, I never smoke before I play. I can't, I never will. And that's part of my temperate around when I know how I'm doing with it is I've never, ever even come close to anything, an edible of any kind, a drop, a joint, anything that contains on a work day where I have to represent myself as a drummer. I don't do it. And when I say that, I quickly make sure I smile briefly and say, after the show, when everyone else pours their drink and does their thing, At that point, I find it helps me relax, and I enjoy some of those benefits in a way that helps me keep, I believe, my presence and in a relaxed state, not being like, oh, everyone's, and not that everyone is drinking, rolling around, but I think anyone who understands what I'm talking about, it tends to not make me feel like I'm out of place because I can't relax enough because everyone's drinking and I'm the odd man out. And do I know how to do this? What's 5.5 years past that? I just want to be able to, yeah. And so, if that makes sense, back to the differences in my life personally, the repercussions of everything from touring and while I was drinking or being active, as far as there were many, and now there are none. As far as repercussions, everything from how hard I had to work. This is one thing I really try and remember: how hard I had to work the next day, the amount of work it took the next day just to maintain wellness enough to accomplish the schedule in front of me, and therefore get to the starting line of the 90-minute set I had to do, which meant that within about 2 hours before, I was starting to have to ramp back up to create a false sense of wellness so I could go out and do that 90 minutes. Only then, when it's all pumping, then you do the same thing again until 4 the next morning or whatever. And then you spend the next day. Does that make sense? Until you plan on a day off where you can actually, all that to say, think of the energy expelled there just to maintain what is required of you physically and at that pace and that with that level of gig, and then to do it without being hungover or taxed or yeah, immense difference and noticeable to everyone around me, for sure. And then finally now in a balanced way to myself, for sure. I enjoy it. I really dig playing now, and for a long time I really I was on autopilot.
Yeah, it sounds really exhausting the way before, you know.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
man, like, oof.
Yeah, and sometimes I look at pictures of that I have or whatever that you come across from something back in the times when I was really, heavily touring and heavily drinking. And I just look at, and it's hard sometimes to remember. It's not hard to remember certain things. I'm not talking in like weird blackout ways, although there are, of course, some of those things. But it's mostly like I just look different, and sometimes I feel like I look a lot older in some of those things of how I was than how I at least feel I look or perceive myself now. It may not actually be the case, but it's unique how I can go. And I think and I equate it to simply this, like, put it this way, right? John, I keep coming back to my idol. It's weird. I've mentioned it twice now, but John Bonham was he was less than 40 when he died. And yet I see pictures near the end, big top hat, from the side through the hi hat with the timpani, and I'm like, yeah, man. I look now and I go like, yeah, Bonnie's like 60. He must be. He was like my grandpa up there, and I'm like, he was less than 40, and that's how much that life and that thing can age you and really take it out of you. And yeah, so I don't know. I'm grateful that I've had a chance, whether or not I ever would from this day on, whenever this is earmarked. That I've had a chance to do it significantly, and even in some ways at the highest level I have with Tears for Fears. At most of the peak for me, for sure, of 15 years has been in the last 6 or 5, and I've gotten to experience that completely alcohol free and without that stuff. Still had some amazing times before, but what feels like it for me has been some of the biggest resurgence or experiences I have had to date with them have happened at a time when I've been able to take it in.
I have a question relating to that. I hope this doesn't get too deep, and I'm not entirely sure how to phrase it. But so, where you've been with them for such a long period of time, and so much has happened to you in that time, and especially like I'm thinking of the time like pre being sober and being sober. Would you say that's kind of like being two different people almost? I don't really know
Yeah.
how because I haven't experienced it, but
Yeah,
I
no, I
just,
think that's okay. So the first, I think that's a really great question, and I want to again not let the bubble get too big and stray all over without just going to the point. Yes, I think it. Well, I think it's got to be on their point of view. Of course, it's two people. It's got to be because it's so blatantly and so unbelievably two people to everyone else who's close to me in my life, and so that's been a second family to me for the primary part of my career. And we've all I mean, again, I say this, and if this wouldn't get me in any sort of trouble, not like I just go, oh, how would this ever get back to anyone that would even care, that would ever like, they all have they all have their stories, of their experiences on the road too. And so it's not like it's not an easy life, and it's tough, and but yeah, I'm not a liability anymore. I've become uh, well, God, unless I'm misreading it, but even way it makes me feel better. So is that selfishly okay because it makes me a better person? I'm not a liability anymore. I'm an asset, you know? Yeah, give me a second to recover from that one. Like
that was
I don't know
a
if you could
great
tell, like
answer.
I have to take my breath. Like I have to, my throat was curdling or whatever. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
no, like, well, to say that, yeah, I mean, whatever to say, it never, that's why I made reference to the fact that a lot of that stuff, and then again, I don't want it to be with the conveyance of like, oh my gosh, no, I don't want to touch a scar. No one wants to intentionally go, let me push on that bruise. But there's a difference between a bruise and a scar, I think, and that is a bruise will still heal, and they're kind of not meant to be. A scar tells a much deeper story about what may or happened, and it's always gonna, and you can't, it will not, to a certain point, not be there, even if it's visually, but you will always have a certain amount of sensitivity, and that is part of the journey. As long as I still feel that, then I know I'm on the right track, because if I somehow become remiss to what what it takes to get through thinking, I put those guys through a lot of stuff too, a lot of concern, as anyone who, if I haven't conveyed it, or no one knows the depth of like, oh, that's really wild. The guy must have just been too drunk to call his kids and whatever. Like no, it wasn't that. It got to the point where I was not allowed to and couldn't legally, and had serious repercussions legally as consequences to my drinking and the effects thereof and all that kind of stuff. Like, and yeah, so I mean, I look at the difference. So to come through all that and then actually be able to communicate that you now understand that where you were a liability before, if you can do the work and continue to uphold a certain thing, then you actually really do become an asset, because then you're fucking on fire. Like then you have a whole different reason than why you want to get to the gig that night, not to just get through it. So then you can go back to doing whatever you want to do, but like you can go, I can't wait to go up and play, because you're really excited about it, and there's a huge difference internally when that's going on. So
Yeah, I mean, that's like the ultimate commitment, isn't it? When you've gone through all of that, you've done all of that work and you're still there playing,
but then
then
the interesting part is, so then this was the other heady part that I didn't want to, but I didn't lose the thought, so I'll come back to it. When you said different people, is I've made my amends now too, and I've said my piece to the things that I know. And there was some gnarly stuff. There was some gnarly stuff that happened. I mean, if it was bad in my family life, you can imagine some of the stuff that you could imagine, like my bandmates saw. And there's and a lot of the stuff we laugh about now because we can, and that's because we all have deep, deep senses of humors, and find that sometimes being able to laugh about some of the darker stuff when you've been through it together is the only way you can even address it or continue to whatever, and go, it's going to be okay, right? But like, yeah, I've had a lot of darker times that they've seen, and the restoration process has been immense. So, but I've done that work and then continue to do it, not necessarily by ever having to bring it up, or unless it's appropriate too, and I can lead the way. Surely, remember that time you guys had to drop a pin and you had to come find me because, and no one wanted to, and no one did except the keyboard player, or blah blah blah. And then I go, see, you came, you loved me, you came and got me. He's like, always, bro. You know, like we can joke about it in a way now. And I go like, but yeah, that really happened. I dropped a pin because I was in a complete blackout in Tel Aviv on a gig, or not on a gig, but, you know, after a gig that night, and was completely useless and helpless. And like, so that's some stuff, but you don't always have to. So now I don't need to go, hey, I just want you guys to know I'm really, because at some point too, it's like, man, get up. You can get up off. It's good. We're through it. Like, let's keep it's so it is still me, all the me that still got the gig, that has held the gig, that was still, hopefully, I never lost the gig. Put it this way, I never lost the gig or jeopardized the gig because I wasn't playing well. I became a liability as to the fact that they just couldn't necessarily know for sure if I was going to show up, if I'd be okay to show up the next day, because they had seen enough of what I was going through to have fear that I wouldn't, that it only took, you know, it only takes the last thing to break and then it all falls apart, and they're canceling 3 gigs in a row because some horrific thing, you know, physically happened to me, or that whatever. I just, at points it was that close. And so I look back at it now and it's like, man, I don't know. And now it's just, I'm mostly the first time down. I'm the first one down in lobby call, or among the first, or have my coffee and have just already been on a walk or gone to a meeting or some crazy stuff. And I'm ready to get on a bus, and they're all like, yeah, they don't have to worry about me. It's the same with like my parents and whatever. So it's a big answer for all of it, but yeah, I mean, I look at it and I go, there's a lot of stuff. The stories go deep, about some of the journeys and interactions that have happened, and not all like, oh, we're here for you. Certainly not. I came very, very close to losing that gig because of it. Very, very close.
I just wanted to ask as well, like now that your children are almost adult and adult with your son, how is their relationship to your job? Like, do they kind of become involved in the stuff that you're doing now, or is there still kind of a bit of a separation?
No, well, not involved to any extent. Okay, so not involved to any extent. I keep thinking like somehow I'm still not connected the wires to the fact that either one of my kids could probably run a much better social media campaign for me than I could. And I keep going, why don't you just ask one of them to like get on board and help you do that, or whatever, like involved in that regard. As involved as in like, are they involved or have seen or been involved, you know, at any point recently with that part of my career and any activity with tears and stuff? And the answer is absolutely. Like, I've, in the last 2 full tours we did back in 2022 and 23, I got to see both of them a few times while I was on the road. And um, they got to see me play in a state, and by that I mean a presence, right? They got to see me do it, knowing, and after post everything, knowing what, and them knowing me. I mean, my children, even though we had separation, know me better than I could say almost anyone, or myself, for sure. Even like, we're just really learning to know who each other. No, you get it. There's so much. There's no. It is undeniable. They're my kids. Like, you get it. Like, they just. And now I'm jokingly apologizing for like, oh yeah, that's my fault. I know, I get it. Like, yeah, you're gonna be. Then I bet you're gonna be. And they're like, yeah, how did you know? I'm like, cause I used to do that or whatever. Like, I get it. They're my kids, but like we can even just that lightheartedly talk about stuff, and they have wicked sense of humors, and so they've been involved by coming to shows. I have some amazing experiences. My son Carter was at the show that we did in Franklin, Tennessee, which is what the live album was recorded from. And the movie that they filmed and whatever, you know, for those Tears for Fears fans and stuff, like, which is big for me because I'm really proud of that record. And I remember for sure having it in my mind. I was more pumped and more nervous or more motivated because my son was there and has seen me drumming, and I've taught him, and he's a great drummer. But that he was there, than the fact that I knew that they were filming and recording and whatever, if that makes sense. And that's an honest to God statement. And then I listened to the recording, and I'm really proud of it because, and that's not even correlating it to the fact that I remember thinking about my son. I'm like, yeah, I'm so pleased with how it came out. So and my daughter too has been to a handful of shows. Madison Square Garden. I've gotten to play Madison Square Garden once in my life so far at 55, and it was with Tears for Fears and as the headlining act. And yeah, my daughter and my mom and my partner and I had and my niece. I had 5 women there in New York that came to New York to my daughter. Yeah, all of them. Like I said, I did my sister, my niece, my mom, my partner, all 5 women there to see me and got to see me. And they got to be there as my guest at Madison Square Garden. So that was pretty wild.
That's amazing. You must feel so proud of
Yeah,
yourself.
I
I
mean,
hope you do.
I do. I think I just still then come back once in a while. I think I've no more than once in a while. That's a lie. If I say once in a while, quite often, I now find myself going, I'm on the angle of going like, yeah, but don't like when I find these things where I'm in my situation where I remember that I'm just being a father to my kids, or my kids are just being their kids to their dad. And I kind of want to go like, I find the first ones I want to send anything that I feel is like, oh, look at this. I'm cool. I'm good. I send it to my daughter, and her next response, not only does she not heart it or like it or whatever, her next thing is like, can I get $40 for DoorDash, or can I do what, like, you know what I mean? Like, she just got home from school. She's a junior in, a 17, she's 11th grade in high school in America. And she's more concerned about if I can get her Taco Bell from DoorDash. I'm like, don't you think that, but then when I know she'll send me a videotape. My daughter has an excellent voice, and my son, same thing too. Like my son, both my kids are insanely talented, smart individuals, and funny. And but my daughter loves to sing, and she performs in her drama. And so I'm flying there in a few days to actually see her and see her sing. And but I know how critical she is of herself because she's talented. And I see that when I was talking earlier, aside from the ears or the nose or whatever, I joke about, I'm sorry. I always go, I'm sorry I gave you, but like she has an incredible musical sense to her. And her mom's incredibly talented too, but like I know that she's got a lot of that, and her voice is amazing. And so, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. I could go on hours, but I'll be quiet.
No, it's good. And I think kids have that way of keeping us grounded, right? Like you're like,
Yeah.
oh, check me. And then they're like, no, can
From
you
the moment
just
they do
don't give a shit?
from the moment they do the alien poo. You can try and be Mr. Coolish. Yeah, I got it, honey. And let me change. Like, is this the one? Is this going to be the diaper? I got it, honey. Ah! Everything else you thought, and then you're gagging, and you're just going, this is not. Oh, this is not what I thought it would be. Yeah, but that's good. That's good because then it's the real stuff, right?
I was just going to say thank you because Kira has been doing a great job of trying to get this scheduled, and you were willing to speak to us at your 5 a.m.
Oh well, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I kid you not. Like, I don't want to let any too far into my own crazy Willy Wonka journey and whatever. But like, I'm the furthest thing. There's so many. I call it the humor of what I'm going through in sort of like a midlife crisis but it doesn't have to be looked at as a crisis. It's just some of the midlife change and where I live. Like again, I won't. Yeah, I won't. Well, I can real quick. It doesn't matter. You probably can. Like I live. Can you see outside?
Oh, yeah.
Like I live in a forest that's pretty secluded and blah blah blah. And point is my life consists of very a lot, but it's very calm and it's very regimented when I'm at home, and I'm usually asleep because of the area where I live too. It's just coming out of winter, but it's dark by 4:15 in the afternoon, and it doesn't get light until 7:30 in the morning. And it's cold and it's wintry, and so like I just got used when I'm home. I'm usually asleep by 8 p.m. my time, and I'm up by anywhere from 4 to 5 and pretty ready to go. I'm a morning person. So it was all that to explain. It wasn't that hard because I usually am up going, why isn't there someone to talk to? Why isn't there someone to do an interview right now?
I'm a bit worried that that is how I'm going to go, because my mum is like that. She's always been one who like goes to bed really early, gets up really early in the morning. And I've always found it crazy. And I've noticed that since having children, I'm waking up earlier and earlier. And I think that
Well,
day is
so
coming.
I would say you could use that as a gauge. If you think about it right now with your mom, do you find that crazy? Or are you going, no, God, she's right? And
Yeah.
wherever you
Now,
find yourself on that pendulum would dictate the answer to, am I getting older?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Let's move on, because
sure.
I've been thinking for a while that she has it right.
There you go.
I want to ask you, we've got a final question, but I don't know how relevant it will be. So before I ask that, I just want to find out what you're looking forward to this year. If you've got anything up and coming that you can share with us. And
Well, I can say this, and again, I work in an environment, and I don't think, and I really, really mean this, I feel like I understand navigating whatever could be even understood when I say the term. I don't think I'm speaking to anything that is considered non, anything I say right now is the only really what I know. And that is this: I don't speak about anything for the next period of time because I always know and understand that there is constantly stuff in the works. And if I take this as an asterisk for anyone that might come across this, because again, I've had such a lovely time, I would certainly love to have people that I would love to hear this conversation that might get a kick out of it, or promote it in any way. But a lot of that involves a lot of people that really love the band and kind of hinge upon anything that gets talked about. And I don't have what information I do have about that. Some of it I just have, like, my point is I'm not hiding anything. I only know what I know. And most of that is about what someone who really was a significant fan of the band, who follows things, would only know, because that's the way the business works. I've been on hold for periods of time. And I can say my answer is coming. Sorry it's taking so long to get to. We just did a series. The last two sets of shows I've done with Tears hasn't been involved with touring. It's been doing residencies in Las Vegas, which is a whole nother show for a whole nother story, for a whole nother thought on how that whole thing is really becoming a thing. And it really is, if you pay any attention to that whole thing. And as a working drummer. So that was unique when you stay in a hotel with people where you're housed at the same hotel where people that come from all over the world will come to watch you perform, and then you got to go get your food from the food court. Or you could, but I just ordered a room. Anyways, that's a whole other story. What I was going to say is that's the only shows we've done. Roland Orzabal announced on stage. That's why I'm saying I'm not saying anything, that his now wife, and who's an incredible human being, that they're expecting. And so navigating, we talk about, and I'm not releasing that as though that he said it from the stage. And if you listen to, if anyone does their deep enough dive. So yeah, he's going to be a father. And I'm so happy, and I'm so incredibly excited for them in the process. So that being said, I also go, okay, well, so that means that then schedules shift and stuff happens, which, I've been fortunate enough where as long as I put it this way, as long as I always try and be wise or keep my head straight about now, which has helped me tremendously, that I'm not soaked like a rum cake with my decisions on how I spend my money. It's like planning the wind in your sails. If you're a sailor, you got to know when how much you're going to get distance based on, the wind should do this much, and and then it's going to dry up, but you're going to be okay because you got that far, you have this much water and whatever. You start thinking like that, which then gets a little old, because you're like, well, why am I worried about, like, okay, I got 6 months. Well, what am I going to do with I don't know, all part of waking up in my recovery and my sobriety. Well, how about you start looking at the fact that you've been drumming professionally for 30 years, and what else have you done besides going, well, I lucked out to get offered the gig in Tears for Fears. What else have you done for the drumming community? I've studied a tremendous amount, and I know a lot about the art, and I love it, and it's the only thing that doesn't feel like work. I can say this: I plan my day right now going, I want any opportunities that continue to appear in that family as they do. I want to be able to be available, but I also am at a point with myself, period, as a man, as a father, as a musician, as a drummer, where I'm now starting to understand, and I want to make sure I tie this into an honest to God compliment to you guys for even doing this. It's because of thinking outside of, and not getting stuck with like, okay, well, what am I doing if I'm not for the next 3 weeks touring Europe playing Tears for Fears songs with them, hopefully. But like, what am I doing other than that? What am I doing? I teach some private lessons, which I enjoy immensely and love it, and have been doing that since I was a late teen. But what am I doing? And I question myself all the time. No one cares. They don't care outside. You're not doing one-handed fulcrum, one-handed rolls, while you smoke a doobie and sip an espresso. I don't know who does that. Who does that? No one does that. Oh, there's a guy that does that? Oh, with a mohawk. And then other kids are filming videos of them throwing their sticks away, going, I'll never be that. And I'm going, what's happening? What's happening? But then I go talk about, your love for playing and your blah, blah, blah. And there's lots of other stuff. And that passion then starts to open up other doors into maybe how you can ride that delicate balance of trying to make a living from the passion that we've spent a lot of time developing. Yeah. And let that be. And if this sounds weird, God, I think they would take it as a compliment. If I'm living my life with that being the daily goal, what can I do today to sort of make my daily bread? Every time I get an email or a phone call about the other thing, it's like I got the scratcher at the gas station, and I'm like, I just won. I won a prize, a significant prize, because now I get to go do that. So I have a setup in my studio that's in this place, like I told you, where I turn back around, and I have a tracking room that I have drums set up all the time for teaching, recording, drumming, doing pieces. I've got a lot of different, I've got this amazing, I call it this man cave that I get to come to and try and figure out. My biggest blessing is that I have it, and my biggest struggle is trying to navigate. Sometimes I have the blessing of being here, but sometimes the difficulty of navigating even what to do or how to be creative, or should I be creative with some end goal that this would result in me making anything to help me support my career? Or do I be creative because I simply felt like doing whatever I wanted to do, recording 5 different snare drums and doing a deep dive on the giant snare strainers versus the whatever, because I love that stuff. I could talk about it 4 hours. I'm doing deep dives on the art and the history for myself, and dare I say, if it catches on when I start trying to see if it interests others, is a deep dive into some of the, and not to be retro for the sake of being retro, but I think there's a really unique period that's happening now where I'm rediscovering drumming from periods of time that I knew existed and was familiar with, but never, now with my experience of many, many years in trial and tribulation, whatever, how those drum sounds, those drum parts, the musicality, the deep dive on the recording side of things and the composition side of things, and how free form was it when no one knew what the fuck they were doing, and the drummer walked in with the drums that you'd look now and go like, there's no way, and yet he goes boom da boom da boom, and it becomes this famous thing. Like how it, oh no, we spent 6 hours tuning that thing to get it right to the right boing, like Steely Dan or something. I'm like, the scale is from here to here, and that whole process fascinates me to no end. And so then trying to recreate it within what you have, or talking about the parts, let alone the sounds, how it was recorded, blah blah blah, that seems to be where I think I'm spending quite a bit of time lately. I'm doing a performance at the Victoria Drum Show in Victoria, BC in about a month, which I rarely do anything like that. I'd say primarily because I've always gone like, I don't know why I don't do anything like that. And I'm like, because you never contact anyone to go, hey, would you consider? And then I did. And of course, yeah, we'd love it. What a great thing. I wonder what he's going to talk about. What's he going to do? I don't know. And so now I get the pleasure and the excitement of putting something together to go do that, and think that someone might get something out of it or enjoy them. But how do you shape a 45-minute presentation at a drum festival that would include a 10-year-old kid who has just won his first pair of sticks, and a 7-year-old guy who's like, where's the swing? Play me the swing, you know? And I'm going, oh, whatever. You can imagine, like, so.
I'm
yeah.
sure you'll find something to talk about, and the time will go so
Look at this.
quickly
Look at how
because
it
it's
already has.
fascinating.
I've managed to string you guys along for an hour and 25 minutes. I have some of the most respectful guys that I idolize as musicians, other drummers, but primarily not drummers. That's why I get it from not drummers, but success, who will constantly tell me, what do you need 6 drum sets for? Answer that one. And that becomes the joke of all the, you just sub guitars for buying snare drums, big fat snare, all their jokes. It's like, but like, because I just know the moment I get rid of that kit, I'm going to go like, I could have used that old Rogers on there, or that whatever. Or it's got immense sentimental value, which I go, to what? And then I'll tie it all back to my kids, probably to say that biggest reason with some of this stuff that I will do with all my might to hold on to the really crucial stuff that, for me, is because I think that would be important to both of them at some point, possibly. And like, oh yeah, you know, think about what they'll tell that your grandpa, if he was like, I'm thinking about playing drums. Grandpa was a drummer. What? Yeah, check out this song. Or whatever, like, holy cow. What a story that would be, right? But then if they get, I think it somehow still gets passed on or kept in my family, that would be hugely important to me, which is why I still have it. I would dare say that's why I still have it, and I'm not with DW, if that makes sense. Not because if John asked for that drum set back in a heartbeat, I'd send it tomorrow.
Our final question is probably not relevant, but we ask it anyway. Do you watch Bluey? Do you know what it is?
Well, before I answer anything, I'm just trying to let it see if it sticks, or if it sticks and rolls down the wall, and it didn't stick. So I'm like, Bluey, no.
That's fine. Don't worry. You don't have to.
No, it's not a test.
Okay, but does that mean that's it? That's the end of the conversation?
That is it. Now we're going to cut you off. No.
Yeah, because then I'm going to go Google it real quick.
Ask him.
While you fucking stay on the phone, and I'm going to tell you if it was even worth asking.
Oh,
it definitely was
Bluey?
worth asking. I actually think you would find it very funny. I do.
You're saying me? Are we
Yeah.
talking about me?
Yeah.
And it's a show, is what you're talking about.
It's
Bluey.
a cartoon. It's a cartoon about dogs, and they're Australian.
But they're not like dogs. They're like a family of humans, but they are cartoon dogs.
Is it a British show?
No, it's Australian. It's written.
So it's Australia. Okay.
Written by a man who wanted to have better like characters for dads in shows.
Oh my gosh. Well, no, I have not heard of it. Is not. And where may I ask, without seeming like this is promotion of some sort, but where do I find this series? Are you guys sponsored by Netflix?
I wish we were sponsored by
Netflix.
Yeah.
Jamie, say thanks a lot, guys. I'm off to watch Bluey on Netflix.
Yeah. Over here, there's a link. No, there's no link. You can find it on YouTube, Disney Plus.
It'll pop up right above the lamp. I don't know anything about what you're talking about. If I posted the amount of videos that I have in my bin that were my attempts at trying to use any of this. Oh, look at this little instructional video shows you how to hold up your phone, and then you can pop where the little thing pops up. I'm like, after spending an hour, I'm like, that's really not too cool. It's okay, but I know how to do it, and I'll forget it tomorrow.
This is so funny. Anyway, if you watch it, you're going to be.
You guys have no idea what I'm talking about.
If you do Google it, I apologize, because you might be like, what the heck are these girls talking about? This is a kid cartoon.
Well,
they've lost their mind.
This is the same thing as like you instantly tell a person with my direction or disposition or propensities, have you seen this? And I go, I don't even know what you're talking about. You're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, whatever. Don't worry, don't watch it. It's the first thing. I can't wait. I want to hang up so I can go find Bluey and go watch it. If you brought it up, then there's got to be a reason, and that intrigues me. So I got to figure out what point you're trying to make.
I'm sorry if it's a disappointment. I am.
Am I reading too much into that?
A little bit, but it is funny.
Dogs.
I think you would find it funny. Like,
so is it a bunch of Australian dogs that hang together as a family, but and like there's female and male dogs, or is it like just bro buddy dogs, father dogs?
It's like a whole neighborhood, but I mean, it is based around the family.
Love it. That sounds like it. I'm in, and that's lovely. But so that means we will at some point then have to have some brief, even if you can attach it to another episode, a brief follow-up about that experience.
Yeah, we'll have a debrief about it.
We don't necessarily, no one has to video that, or we don't even necessarily have to stress about getting that time together, because I don't know if anyone would matter, but I certainly know that I think I'm going to be entertained by it for sure.
I just don't want you to get up at 5 a.m. for that debrief. Just
no,
let's put that as a rule.
Because if I got up at 5, that's sleeping in.
Oh,
I got stuff to get to. I got trees, and spring is coming.
Spring is on the way.
I got snare drums to count.
Jamie, thank you so much for your time. You've been such a delight. And
no, it's my pleasure.
Thank you for being so open and for sharing all that you did. I know maybe it wasn't expected, like the standard drumming podcast, but we really appreciate you just being open to it. So thank you.
This has been incredible. I'm just really, really grateful. Thank you for spending time with me and for asking me the stuff that, like I said, I can honestly, fully honestly say I have not had a lot of time or spent much time, because in the past it's been uncomfortable. It's hard to sometimes spend time articulating out loud some of your feelings about this stuff, and the honesty about it, unless I try and be someone else in any scenario like this, that is not me. And I'm trying really, really hard not be anything other than that. And to me, sometimes just being able to go, why can't I say that's how I feel, or that's how, but it's not always the most comfortable, and it's a vulnerable position for anyone to ever be in at those times. And so appreciate you guys doing a format and creating a space where you can bring that to attention.
Thank you for being so honest with us. It was really our pleasure to speak with you.
100%. My pleasure too. And enjoy the rest of your evenings. And I look forward to another chance to catch up, and I'm going to go find Bluey.
Thanks for listening to the Drummer Mamas podcast. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave us a 5-star rating, because it makes us more visible to other listeners. And we really do appreciate any comments or reviews. It makes a difference. Thanks again, and see you next time.